meeting of the Education and Pupil Services Committee will please come to order. I will now turn over the Education and Pupil Services Committee agenda to Mrs. Mitchell.
I believe it's Mrs. Kelly tonight leading our agenda. So could you please, just for the audience who's here, I know our first agenda item, they're sort of anxious for that to happen, but could you just review what we're doing tonight under Education and Pupil Services for those who are in attendance?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So tonight we have five agenda items for the Education and Pupil Services Committee. We're going to begin with the International Mother Language Day and Census Project. Dr. Manfrey and Mr. Salerno will be presenting our winners of the contest. The second item is PebbleGo and PebbleGo Next. Mrs. Kathy Kenya is here to present this digital resource for students in grades 1 through 5. Third item is Read 180 and System 44, which are digital literacy licenses that Mrs. Ortley will be presenting for approval for the middle school students who need some basic instruction for reading. The fourth item is the Personal Finance Elective that Mr. Schwartz will be presenting for the Upper Darby High School. The fifth item are our policies, which we'll be looking at policy 233, which is suspension and expulsion. So there are items for tonight.
Thank you. So I think at this time we'll proceed with agenda item number 1, International Mother Language Day and Census Project. Dr. Manfrey.
Good evening, members of the board and public and fellow administrators and teachers. I'm here this evening to talk about International Mother Language Day and the Census Project. Traditionally, in Upper Darby School District, dating back to 2014, we have held an annual International Mother Language Day poster contest throughout our school system. This poster contest is to commemorate International Mother Language Day, which was enacted by the United Nations, and International Mother Language Day is celebrated annually on February 21st. It is a day that was established to promote awareness of linguistic and cultural diversity, and in what better place than Upper Darby School District to celebrate such topics. So every year in Upper Darby School District, we celebrate International Mother Language Day through a poster contest, but this year we received information from the Census Bureau in regards to this being a census year, and we were invited to participate in a census poster contest by the branch, the NAACP media branch. And as a result of that, we put our collective minds together and decided that if we could marry the two poster contests together, it would be kind of a neat way to celebrate both the 10-year census and the fact that Upper Darby School District is such a diverse community. So normally, the theme of the International Mother Language Day poster contest is from many countries, regions, and places, we are one community. This year, we added, therefore, we must be counted. It's very important that we celebrate the 10-year census project because we believe here in Upper Darby School District and throughout Delaware County that, frankly, we are undercounted, that we are not represented as well as we should be in regards to the census, which means potentially less funding for Upper Darby School District, less funding for Delaware County. So we embraced this opportunity to put the two together, and we did lessons at the elementary level on what the census is all about and what the census is not. And we did lessons at the secondary level regarding what the census is and what the census is not. And I'm happy to report that we had numerous participants in our International Mother Language Day census contest this year. And Mr. Salerno, the Director of Elementary Education, and I will be announcing the winners of those poster contests. At the elementary level, there was one winner for each elementary school, and those students will receive a recognition certificate from the Superintendent of Schools and the Director of Elementary Education, and that certificate will be accompanied by a one-year subscription to National Geographic worth $25. And at the secondary level, the students will be receiving a recognition certificate and a gift card. Now, I want to recognize Mayor Keffer and Director of Special Programs, Allison Dobbins, who have agreed to partner with Upper Darby School District, as the township has done in the past, to continue that tradition of Upper Darby Township and Upper Darby School District working together to celebrate our diversity and to celebrate the many different languages that exist in Upper Darby School District, which right now we are at 83 different languages in Upper Darby School District. So we often talk about celebrating our diversity. This is one day every year where we really get to do that. So at this time, I'm going to ask Mr. Salerno, the Director of Elementary Education, to come to the microphone, introduce the winners and the schools from where the winners where the winners come from, and I will be giving out the certificates. And I will ask the elementary winners to stay up front, because once everyone comes up, including the secondary winners, middle school winners, and high school winners, we want to get obviously a picture. So I'll give out the certificates, and Mr. Salerno can announce the elementary winners.
Thank you, Dr. Manfrey. Good evening, everyone. At the elementary school, as Dr. Manfrey mentioned, the students worked tremendously hard, and I have to give just a special shout out to all of the teachers at the elementary level and one of our supervisors, Ms. Kathy Kenya, and the building level leaders, the building principals, for taking the time, to Kathy for developing the lesson plan that happened across all the elementary schools at every grade level, with the learning target or objective of, I can demonstrate knowledge of the importance of the 2020 census for my community through a poster. This lesson happened throughout the district, so I would like just to recognize the principals, the teachers, and our thousands of participants across the district for all of their hard work. Let's give them all a round of applause, please. So what you can see right now is from Aronimink, Ryan Rice, fifth grader at Aronimink Elementary School. Congratulations, Ryan. Come on up if you're in attendance. Good job, Ryan. Okay, yeah. This next poster is one of our youngest winners from first grade, from Bywood Elementary School, Natalie Ramos. I'll shake Natalie's hand. From Charles Kelly Elementary School, we have a fourth grader, Nashida Najaba. Very colorful one here. From Garrettford Elementary School, fifth grader, Ryan Dorso. From Hillcrest Elementary School, another fifth grader, Emily Smith. From Highland Park Elementary School, fourth grade student, Fernanda Cabrera. Good job. Congratulations. From Primus Elementary School, another fourth grade student, Jaden Backus. From Stonehurst Hills Elementary School, fifth grade student, Jari Ridley. From Walter Senko Elementary School, fifth grade student, Lamine Silla. And last but not least, from Westbrook Park Elementary School, fourth grade student Viola O'Connell. Parents, if you want to come forward and get some pictures, this would be an opportune time. Feel free to do so.
Just wanted to say that the students did an excellent job, and I hope all of our families will share their students' artwork. It is available on our website with your neighbors and friends to try to remind them to be counted. Today I saw my first billboard about the census, so I was really excited. It's on Lansdowne Avenue going towards Westchester Pike, so check it out. Maybe you'll see them around town.
Great. So we're switching roles here at the secondary level. Again, I want to thank the township Director of Special Projects, Allison Dobbins, and our mayor, Barbara Ann Keffer, for helping with this project and contributing to the awards. I'm going to start with the middle school awards. We have a first place winner and a second place winner. Our first place winner from Drexel Hill Middle School. Look at that. Is that beautiful or what? Isn't that beautiful? Safa Hizumi. Congratulations. And our second place winner from Beverly Hills Middle School, Wendy Zhang. Also beautiful. Love the colors. From Upper Darby High School, our first place winner, Harinder Jeet Rakra. Congratulations. How'd I do? Thank you. And our second place winner, Dinora Flores. Okay, same routine? Okay.
The second item on the agenda is PebbleGo and PebbleGo Next. Mrs. Kathy Kania is here. She is our supervisor of social studies, art, music, and library. And she is going to be presenting our digital resource for students in grades 1 through 5. This resource can be used in the library to help with research, but it can be used in the classroom as well as at home. So if approved, this would go into effect for the 2021 school year, so next school year. So I'm going to pass it on to Kathy so she can begin the presentation.
Good evening, President Brown, Vice President Mitchell, school board members, Dr. McGarry, and the Upper Darby School District community. Preparing our Upper Darby School District learners for 21st century skills and careers requires learning needs to be individualized, interdisciplinary, continually updated, and accessible anywhere at any time. For that reason, I am requesting the acquisition of PebbleGo and PebbleGo Next for our elementary students. I'm not going to read off the slide for you. I'm going to give you a little bit of background. Our elementary librarians are responsible for teaching digital citizenship as well as research skills in their school library classes. Seeing a need for more resources for mandated grade-level research projects and an opportunity to teach basic digital research skills, they sought out information on their own on PebbleGo based on recommendations from area librarians. After spending a PD session with the vendor, they were able to acquire a free one-year trial for this school year for our elementary schools. They then asked me to support the purchase of the programs for the next school year. What you're looking at now is the databases for each of the programs. PebbleGo, again, is grades 1 to 3. PebbleGo Next is grades 3 to 5. I just want to point out that the new health platform that launches in August includes 150 new articles on fundamental health topics that includes social emotional learning topics such as feelings and emotions, healthy behaviors, relationships, friends, and more. If you give me a second, I'll do a demo for you. So I'm going to click on animals.
Amphibians. Frogs.
So as you can see, the program will read to students that need help, and it tracks as
Frogs
it reads.
are amphibian.
Additionally, it has definitions for the words in red. Whoops. It shows the habitat. Again, here's a definition. It shows food, life cycle, fun facts. Then Read More gives articles and books. I don't know if we're able to scroll down. There we go. There's videos, 24-second video of frogs. Let me see if I can scroll up. Cross that off, scroll back down. And then a map of where you can find frogs. Oops,
Frog.
sorry. And then just one other thing I want to show you. There's articles and activities. This particular one has articles that can be printed out or just additional research. Down here's an activity. You can print it as a PDF or with a Google app that we have accessible on our Chromebooks, something called Doc Hubs. We can process that through Doc Hubs, and the students will be able to type right on the papers. Obviously, the one we're drawing, they're not going to do that. Go back to this. So that's just a quick demo, and obviously, there's all kinds of different animals, etc. Some of the benefits are up here on the screen, including reliable resources, activities, read aloud standards, equitable access, which I'll talk about in a second. There's an authenticated link, which means that there is no login, username, and password. Students will be able to access it right from the teacher page. Just a side note, since between November 22nd and February 15th, in our 10 elementary schools, almost 17,000 articles have already been accessed through these databases. In the name of equity, all schools have access to the same valuable content in PebbleGo. Additionally, the information is simple to navigate, contains age-appropriate text, and it offers extended learning opportunities. Finally, all text is available in Spanish and is 508 and WCAG 2.0 compliant. WCAG is Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, which means all the content is accessible to students with disabilities, compatible with assistive technologies, students with color blindness and hearing impairments, and it offers alternative text and descriptive titles for all images and videos. Next slide. This is how we're going to implement it over the next school year. All 10 librarians are using PebbleGo right now. Their excitement is starting to spill into our classrooms as word gets out about the ease of use and student engagement. The Primus Autistic Support class recently used the biography database to do a Black History Month project that is hanging in their hallway at the school. It's fabulous. This is the kind of program that I believe will grow organically from positive word of mouth in all of our schools. The cost for 10 site licenses is $17,390. I'm really famous for negotiating prices down, but I couldn't get this guy to budge. But I did get him to throw in 20 free ebooks for each school available through our Destiny database. I'd also like to mention that many school districts surrounding us use it, including Lower Merion, Marple Newtown, Westchester, Chichester, Garnet Valley, Haverford, Radnor, Rose Tree Media, and Upper Merion. Anybody have any questions?
Thank you for the informative presentation.
You're welcome.
Is that a per year cost?
Yes.
Okay. Other than that, any other board members have questions?
Is there anything comparable that we're using right now? Would this be sort of replacing something, or is it really a new thing that we don't have anything really comparable right now?
This is a new thing, and we have nothing this comprehensive at all.
So I was interested in the part, the no authenticated link, so they can access it directly from the teacher's page, you said?
Yes.
So if they open up one of those PDFs and they fill it in, how is it saved by the student or for the student?
It's easily accessible through Google Classroom, and most of our elementary students are already using that in their classes, so it should be an easy.
So once they fill it in, they can just save it in their Google Classroom
Yep.
profile? Okay. Thank you.
I think it's great that how accessible it is for our students, with the listening and it's really a big improvement, so thank you.
You're welcome.
I guess my question is the content standard aligned, meaning is the information in the system aligned with what the students are learning? In the
Yes. So
classroom?
not only is it
Okay.
Common Core standard aligned, it's aligned with their HMH curriculum and ELA
Okay.
and the library standards for research.
Okay, thank you.
I don't see any further questions, so thank you so much for
You're
the
very welcome.
presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item number 3.
So the third item, Mrs. Susan Ortley, who is the supervisor for reading, ELA, world languages, and is that everything? Yeah, that's everything. She will be presenting Read 180 and System 44, which are literacy licenses, online digital literacy licenses that we would like to implement in the middle school. As you may remember, last year at this time, or a little bit before this, we asked for a pilot of this program up at the high school. And since then, we also came to the board, I want to say about maybe probably about February of last year, around the same time, and asked for actually the implementation to occur at the high school. So we went through a pilot at the high school. We also implemented it at the high school, this year being our first year. And Sue came to me, as well as Mrs. Simone, and as who is the high school principal, and also the reading coach here at the high school, Mrs. Kristen Hoyt, and said, we need to bring this program to the middle school as well, so we start to build that continuum. So Sue is here to describe the program to us in a little bit further detail and how it will support our middle school students.
I'm pleased to be here tonight to discuss this very needed program at our middle school level. As Ms. Kelly described, that we did pilot and implement this at the high school level, and within a few months, we are seeing some impressive results so far. So I wanted to make sure that we could offer, my goal's been to offer a continuum of services that linked together from school to school. And I think this is an important piece that we need to put into place. So far this year at Upper Darby High School, I gathered some of our current data, actually just for our fall MAP scores for ninth grade students, and our winter MAP scores for ninth grade students, and was very pleased to see that our below basic group dropped to an all-time low of 10.5%. It generally runs and hangs around 15 to 16% per year. I'm hoping that's an outcome of the program, in addition to all the other initiatives that are taking place this year, but I can see some difference in that level of student. In addition, Mrs. Hoyt has let us know that many kids have already exited the program. They're hitting their targets rather quickly. So I wanted to be able to describe some of that to you. This is an infographic that has become rather popular and famous. This is developed by Dr. Hollis Scarborough. It's called the Scarborough Reading Rope. It's meant to just illustrate the complexity of learning to read, that in addition to reading comprehension and skilled reading, we need to look at all of the components that are necessary for that to happen. Included in that, if you see at the bottom of the rope, are all the word recognition skills. What we've had at both Beverly Hills Middle School and Drexel Hill Middle School has been a very good research-based program called SRA. I'm sure you've heard of it, or we've been using it for many, many years. It is a tried and true research-based program. However, the SRA program works in a different way than the Read 180 program. SRA is a differentiated program where students get those extra skills in the building blocks of reading. However, it largely stops there. If you can go to the next slide. It does do a nice job in getting our kids learning to decode, but by middle school, of course, we know that reading is more than decoding. And we do see some gain in our students' reading fluency, but again, at middle school, there's more to it than reading more quickly and more accurately. So System 44 and Read 180 are now available as a kind of a tandem two-part of the Read 180 program. System 44 addresses those needs for older students. This is developed specifically for students above 4th grade up through 12th grade. And the Read 180 program gives students lots of opportunity to read instructional level text as well as grade level text. And it is now a new product. It's called, I think, Next Gen, Read 180, where it's also incorporating more writing activities, writing to analyze text, as well as more opportunities for students to choose what they're reading. And the materials are much more timely for them, and things that they may want to learn about. The events are current. It's, I think, 97% informational text, so that they're learning to navigate through more complex text as it goes through. Some of the features of the program are, I mentioned that SRA is an individual, or is a differentiated program. System 180, System 44 and Read 180 are considered individualized. So there's ongoing formative assessment that the students experience through the computer program as well as with their teacher, and the program moves with them, as opposed to SRA, which is rather lockstep. Everybody's on the same page. The teacher teaches the next lesson the next day. Whether you achieved it or if you're beyond that, it doesn't seem to matter. You just continue and accomplish all of the lessons in an X amount of time. With these programs, they move with the student. The student needs more practice. It will give them that. If the student's ready to move on, they will move on. Okay, yep.
So to implement this program, first, we would like to do PD, if approved, beginning at the end of this school year, and then into next school year, into early August, if possible. So we're working on a quote still with the company. This is an HMH product as well. We're working on the logistics of just the professional development package. We were able to convert some of our older licenses from Read 180. When Read 180 was first brought into the middle schools years and years ago, we bought something called an enterprise license or a universal license that are no longer able to be used. So they were able to take the 200 that are still in existence and convert them into these literacy licenses as we know them now as the next generation licenses. So they're able to convert those. With this first year of implementation, this initial piece, we will have to purchase resources for the teachers, of course. That will come with all of the books for the classrooms, as well as the professional development as we continue to work on that part of the bundle. So this initial piece is about $100,000. Now, don't get nervous there, because I know, Mr. Brown, I'm sorry. So this first bit is we pay for most of this, or not most of it, it, but we pay for a chunk of this through title funds. Because BH is a title school, we're able to use title funds to do that. And remember, since we are purchasing SRA right now, we're able to shift the funding from SRA into the System 44 and Read 180 licenses, since we were also able to convert things that did help on this initial savings. Throughout the district, though, throughout the high school, we have 750 licenses. If we purchase these licenses, there are about 660 licenses that we will be purchasing, and then we'll start to look at this as a continuum, that's 6 through 12, and how can we use those licenses to service students 6 through 12. So that's our game plan. We spoke to Mrs. Hoyt this morning about the licenses and how many that she thinks that we need as we move 8th grade into 9th grade as well. So we're really trying to bridge that gap between what is happening in the middle school into the high school. Prior to us using it, when we had the enterprise licenses, we were running it on a 90-minute block or an 80-minute block of time when the middle school had the power block. Now the recommended time for this program is either an 80-minute block of time or 2 40-minute lessons. So that's why we're able to revisit this before we didn't have that time. When we started to change the schedule because of financial difficulties and everything else, we needed to say, this is maybe not what's best for our students. We don't have the time. We don't have the time to follow with fidelity. This program is interactive in that the students are working, but they're in small groups. So they're in like groups of 3, and they rotate around. And the 40 minutes is the first lesson, and 40 minutes is the second lesson, giving you that 80-minute, but it's now chopped over 2 periods of time. The recommended amount of students in the groups are still about 20, so anywhere from 12 to 21, they say, is the recommended time. So we'll be working with Brian and Matt, which we have throughout this whole process. Dr. Sohn and Dr. Alloway, who I believe were here at one point, they that are still back there. We've been working with them to have this conversation on what will it look in their building so that we can make sure that the classrooms are ready and the teachers are ready as well. I've worked with Bob also to make sure we're ready with the technology, which he assures me we are ready with the technology.
The nice thing is we've had a trial run at the high school level, so I think that staff and our staff that have helped set that up are experienced now with the program, and I think it went smoothly here. I'm not saying that it did not. It went very, very smoothly, but I think moving this into the middle schools is the right way to go, and it's a good time to do that.
Thank you. Any questions from board members? I know Mr. Brown has a question.
Just a couple of quick ones. Is it, Ms. Orley, is it safe to say that students with System 44 and Read 180, that they have more of a role in taking a proactive approach to their own education, because it says that they can choose the age-appropriate materials, where it doesn't look like they have a mechanism to really do that with SRA, is that correct?
That's correct, and I've been in nearly all of the Read 180 and System 44 classes here at the high school and asked students what they think of it. I watched a young man who was probably about 15 years old working on very low-level decoding skills, and I asked him what he thought about it, and he said it's now making sense to him. So that was huge, and you know I worry about kids feeling about how their perception of the materials, but only positive things that I saw are happening. In addition to that, I'm watching kids just select reading that they would like to read. So the computer gives them a lot of choices for digital materials, and they can pick anything from sports to music to art to current events, or just information from around the world, or newsworthy items as well. So they have total choice in that.
Thank you very much. Ms. Kelly, you talked about the costs, and thank you for your thorough explanation of that. But I'm concerned about the ongoing costs, because I think for the first go-round, you talked about converting the SRA funding and also being able to convert the Read 180 enterprise licenses. But after that, like the second year and the third year, how will we afford this?
So that was my exact conversation with Dr. McGarry today. That is my fear as well. But if we're looking at that whole continuum again, about how many licenses we have, once we do those conversions, the cost is not going to sit that high each time because the initial cost has already been put out there. We won't need to do the teacher resources again. We will need to, of course, get the next license. And then they said that they can work with us on a 3-year or a 5-year plan as we start to look further into these implementation years.
My hope is that we will need them less and less. I think we'll always need this kind of an intervention for our students, but my hope is that the need would be diminished over time.
Okay, thank you very much. Last question, are there any neighboring districts currently using Read 44 and, System 44 and Read 180?
Yes, I didn't do as thorough search as Ms. Kania did with hers, but I do know that local school districts are using it. I believe Downingtown is using it for most of their reading population. Any others that you're aware of?
That's the one
That Downingtown comes out, yeah.
Just as, just for the public, we are focusing on our elementary reading program with a little bit more, obviously, with the PebbleGo and other resources that we are putting in professional development. So just, if you could just explain how you see us needing less and less reading resources to this level in our secondary schools.
Over time? In this year, we don't have test scores to back up any of our thoughts and feelings other than our MAP scores. I think it's too early to tell what the impact of Into Reading has been, but what we see happening in the classrooms has been, I think, remarkable in terms of the level at which students are working. In terms of kids who need intervention, we're seeing a lot more rigor being brought to their instruction as well. It's, like I said, because we just started that program this past year, it's hard to know. But I think that with the new materials that we're bringing into middle school as well, we'll have a stronger overall ELA program, and that has a big impact on the number of kids who then need intervention.
I appreciate, Sue, thank you, and Christine. Historically, I just want to, having been here for a long time, the stimulus money when it was cut from the school district, to answer your question directly, we know for sure Read 180 was a program that existed years ago in the school district. Because we've had to make cuts and we're trying to get back to that place, the elementary programs were very robust. We had strong small group instruction. We were providing these resources. When we had to move away from reading specialists and those different positions, some of these programs, this program in particular at one time, really was only for 6 to 8 students at a time. That became an issue. Then it became technology driven. We didn't have enough technology to pull that off in the school district at that time. So when the stimulus money hit, we lost that money. That was a problem. Scheduling became an issue. We didn't have the technology, and we could no longer run this. The other piece of this that's interesting now, that if you go back to that Scarborough's rope, that's an important part of reading, motivation. So as kids get older, decoding the program SRA, which was a tried and true even for adult literacy for students, literally some of it, having taught it, is a clicker. So it's like click, repeat after me, cat, click, we say cat together as a class. Students, while they might struggle with reading, motivationally as they get older, they're aware that they're in a classroom with other students and they're saying to themselves, the teacher feels that way and the students feel, listen, I might not be a strong reader, but don't treat me this way. So motivation in middle school and secondary reading is an issue. These programs, from what you're presenting to us today, eliminate that motivational factor. Kids can work independently. They're not in the same room with everybody. They click that clicker, that can go away. Teachers did not enjoy teaching the SRA corrective reading program, which is a program that literally taught, vowel, consonant, and blending of words in small increments called, then it builds up to multisyllabic words, where you use a clicker in the classroom and students have to repeat back those words. And that was the best at that time in even teaching adult literacy. But middle school students and high school students who struggle with reading were embarrassed to be in that kind of program. So we knew before the stimulus money got cut, when we had the right kind of programs in place and enough reading teachers, 96% of the subgroups in the Upper Darby School District were successful. When the school district was making adequate yearly progress and we had those resources in play, 96% of the subgroups were accurate. This program, in particular at Beverly Hills Middle School, was in play because they had a special schedule, different than Drexel Hill's schedule. And then when they switched to technology, and then we had to switch our schedules, and then we lost reading specialists, we lost this program.
Well, I'm glad that we're able to make it work to come back. Are there any other questions or comments, Mr. Neal?
Having actually taught this program, so I can speak that Philadelphia School District actually uses this, and I'm very happy to see that the SRA program is actually going, because I actually taught that as well. And comparing both, like Dr. McGarry said, there's quite the difference. The Read 180 is the blended classroom. But Mike, I do have a question regarding space. So as you're aware, we have a space issue in our middle schools, okay? And the Read 180 classroom really requires a designated space. Not really a classroom space, but a space that can have like reading nooks, a couch, chairs, bean bags, that the students in one of the stations, out of the three stations, when they're doing their independent reading. Is that available at Drexel Hill and Beverly Hills? Will this program actually be implemented with that vision?
Yes, I don't see why. Okay. I don't see why it couldn't be. I do know that the reading specialists in both of those middle schools are sometimes in trailers or in smaller classroom spaces. However, the Read 180 classroom requires an area for the teacher to work with a small group, requires areas for students to work maybe in groups or independently, and also a bank of computers. And I think the most that they would need would be maybe 6 to 8 computers, because the students rotate through 3 rotations during that reading lesson. So I think that our spaces are adequate for this program. I've seen some very creative use of high school spaces for Read 180. I'm enjoying all of the classrooms that our teachers here have set up as well. For that purpose, and they're generally not always in a full-size classroom either. So it's really the teacher who kind of, puts their special touch in that classroom to make it work.
I did speak to our sales rep today about that. I did speak to my sales rep today about that as well, and that would be part of the professional development, the setting of that classroom and how to make the stations happen, and what is the best use of space as well. So we did discuss that today, and he would put that as part of the professional development on how to set up the classroom.
I just want to add to that, if you can save those thoughts as well, because they're very important questions for the other part of the presentation as well tonight, as far as the facilities and the space. It's a good point that you're bringing up. What we're torn with, and we'll talk about this when the middle school comes up, Beverly Hills Middle School is now at 1,555 students. So we can't hold back our students for these programs, but to your point, until we start to get everybody on the same page with why the facilities are important and why we have to make those expansions happen, when we do build that new middle school, we can make even better use of the space in the 2 existing middle schools, and that's the ultimate game plan. What we can't do is hold back where we are without bringing these programs. But you're right, these programs do require space, and it's a struggle sometimes when you talk to others about how education has changed and the use of space has changed in classrooms. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Sorry. Yeah, like for instance, a traditional classroom, single chairs and seats, lined up in rows and columns, doesn't work for a Read 180. And if we're using a classroom that a math teacher has to come in and teach a course in that room, it's not going to work. The students in Read 180, actually, they come in, they know exactly what to do. They know what they can look up at the chart and see what station they're starting off in. And so, we can't be utilizing taking time out of that child's day to actually rearrange a classroom for the group work, the different stations. So I just want the public to know that it's so important that these programs, for them to be effective, they need a designated space. for the children to actually come into.
Mrs. Ortley, do we know if the Beverly Hills and Drexel Hill will be using a designated space? One of our concerns always is implementing programs with fidelity and making sure that the students get the appropriate minutes and that they're served correctly. So are they going to have dedicated space?
I believe both principals are here, but I have not been in a reading classroom in either of the schools where the space was not dedicated for reading. It may be shared by 2 reading teachers, but it's definitely a reading room. And they're already nicely appointed, and teachers have done a marvelous job. They're hardworking in both buildings to create that ambience for students to read and learn.
Great, thank you so much. Are there any other questions from board members about System 44 and Read 180? I don't see any, so thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
And
Thank you.
so our next agenda item is agenda item number 4, Personal Finance Elective.
So Mr. Schwartz, who is the supervisor for math, business, and technology, will be joining me for this presentation. What we're proposing is a personal finance elective in the business department at the high school. As you may recall, last year, we also asked for permission to put in an elective at the high school for personal finance, but we called it financial literacy. So financial literacy is in the math department, which is an elective there, which, as you may recall, Algebra 2 runs as a full year, 40-minute block, and to balance that class, we put in the financial literacy piece of that. Years and years ago, when we were testing for PSSAs at the 11th grade level, we had a full year, 80-minute block of Algebra 2. Since the criteria has changed and we have moved to the Keystones, there was no need, and the Keystone sits as an Algebra 1 course, there is no longer a need for an Algebra 2 course to be the same way as it is right now. So we have moved to a personal finance class or a financial literacy class that is opposite their Algebra 2 for our academic students. We also have a personal finance class. Am I taking all of your stuff? I'm sorry. Go ahead. You go. No, math is my thing. You sound like me. I'm sorry. Go. I'm sorry. I'll be quiet. Go ahead.
Thank you,
Go.
Mrs. Kelly.
Sorry.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board, Dr. McGarry. Required documentation has been submitted for the creation of a new course at Upper Darby High School titled Personal Finance. As Mrs. Kelly mentioned, it will be offered as an elective option through the business department. Personal finance will provide students with the practical skills that will, among other things, help establish strong financial habits, help students maximize earning potential, and avoid becoming victim of predatory lending tactics that often kind of prey upon young, newly creditworthy adults. In recognition that Pennsylvania is ranked #1 in the nation for student debt load, with an average of over $36,000 per student, legislators in Harrisburg and the Pennsylvania Department of Education have urged local school districts to make financial education accessible to every student. With your approval, that will be the case in Upper Darby, as this course will become the 3rd at the high school addressing this topic. Again, as Mrs. Kelly mentioned, this will join an elective in the math department, financial literacy, which is taught in conjunction to Algebra 2, and finance and investing, a business department elective that focuses on long-term savings and an in-depth study of the stock market. This course, Personal Finance, will follow the model curriculum outlined in the Pennsylvania Department of Education website and address standards in economics, family and consumer science, career education and work, business, computer, and information technology, and include units on money management, career planning, borrowing and credit, financial services, risk management, and savings and investment. We are recommending the use of Personal Financial Literacy by Joan Ryan and Christy Ryan, a Cengage publication, as our primary resource. Through our vetting process, it was determined to best address the required standards while also helping to delineate the course from our other options. Should you decide to move this course forward, I am confident that we'll be able to say that every Upper Darby High School student will have an opportunity to gain the necessary basic skills for a prosperous financial future. So, thank you.
Thank you. It's exciting.
It is.
Are there any questions or concerns from board members?
First, a clarification. So for Algebra 2, they no longer will have personal finance or financial literacy in the programming.
No, that will still be,
That will
that'll
still,
be a
okay.
course through.
So 100% of the students will have some sort of personal finance
I don't bel-
materials.
It's not going to be a requirement, but it will be accessible to every student who wants to take it.
Okay, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe there is a state requirement that every student have some sort of personal finance, I don't believe it's an actual course, but it has to be embedded in some subject. And that's coming up.
So there is a Senate, there is a Senate Bill 723 that was recently started to start that conversation of personal finance. It is an LEA decision, so it would be our decision to bring that forward if we wanted it to count as a graduation requirement. Right now, we are saying that it's not a graduation requirement, but we are creating these opportunities similar to the pathways to graduation, another opportunity for our students to get this information. So we would have the course in the business, or we'd have 2 electives in the business department, and we would also have the math course as well that students can take. So there's a few different paths that students can get to that information. But right now, at this point, we're not saying it is mandatory graduation requirement for all students to have that.
No, but we are asking the board to allow this to count as a graduation credit. So currently, what the state is saying, Governor Wolf came out, and I've been supplying this information to the board in my updates. Governor Wolf came out and said, you can allow a personal finance course to count toward a graduation credit in one of the following subject matters. The reason why the school district can't make it mandatory for all students right now is we are worrisome that if we make every student take this right now, it may prohibit other electives from running. So our first initiative will be, let's expand our offerings for different levels, which this does, in 2 different areas. And that will then allow us to get a better gauge of the other interest that we have. We already have a high student interest in these courses, but we don't want to force students right now to take these electives, which will then cut down other elective opportunities at the high school. So our first effort is to expand our offerings in those 2 subject areas. Students then can opt to allow that to take a credit for a current graduation credit, which the board will have to approve, which we've already talked about in the course selection guide. And then after we look at this, if we see that it doesn't have a significant impact, meaning it doesn't hinder other electives from running at the high school, which has always been an issue in the public, then we can just come back and say, okay, we feel pretty good that we can make this a graduation requirement. Our first step is allow it to count, to take over a credit, and try to create more levels for more opportunities for kids to have exposure to that.
Ms. Kelly, maybe you can answer this, or maybe you won't be able to, but when the counselors are working with the students to recommend which courses they take, I'm assuming that there is some, like, it would be a good idea for you to take one of these 3 offerings in financial literacy. I mean, eventually it would be nice if we got to like the pathways to graduation where we said, this is what we'd like you to take if you're doing this, and we recommend X, Y, and Z as well. So if you could just maybe go over how that looks.
So that is the exact conversation. So the counselors bring in the students and have that conversation. What is your pathway? What do you want to do? This may be a great idea. I just went through the same process with my own son, and I said, EJ, you are taking this course in 10th grade because I think it's a very good opportunity. I think more students should be taking it. So that is the very conversation that we have at the high school. What is your pathway? What do you need to be successful? And where can we put this in your schedule so that you do have that opportunity to take it? So those conversations are happening on a regular basis, especially this time of year during course selection.
Is it running full block? Or is it just a skinny?
Single semester, full block.
Thank you.
And just as a point of clarity, we talked about the Algebra 2 running as a full year skinny and the financial literacy with it. We also have an option where it's just Algebra 2 as a single semester, full block, where they would not get the financial literacy component, but then could pick up one of these other classes as an elective offering.
Thank you for the clarification. Any other questions from board members?
I am a proponent of personal finance. I would love to make it mandatory that our students actually take it. As many of you know that I have 7 teaching certifications. I pretty much taught mostly every class, and this year I'm actually teaching personal finance. And the number one issue that I get from parents, community members, voters, is our students don't know financial literacy. They're learning Algebra 2, but they're not learning the basics of financial literacy. So I'm happy to see that we're looking to add this. But I do have some concerns regarding the textbook selection and the process that was used. So on the textbook recommendation form, it was written that it was the most developmentally appropriate for all high school students out of the textbooks that were selected and reviewed. However, looking at the textbook reviews, and there was no reading level determined even by the publisher, reading level determined by the person evaluating the text for any of those textbooks, as well as the textbook that is selected. There were a lot of criteria that were left unanswered regarding accessibility. And one that was concerning to me is that, does this text and assessment materials have adequate field testing? And so is this a publication that has some fidelity with it, and there was no feedback provided by schools using this textbook, and is it favorable? So I do have concerns regarding that. There was actually a lot that was not checked off. And before you answer, I would like to recommend possibly to the board that we look at this document and actually add a column NA. If something was not applicable, that it wouldn't be a yes or a no for future instead of it just being blank.
That's an administrative regulation, so I
Okay.
mean, Dr. McGarry would have to make that recommendation. Mr. Schwartz, do you have any feedback on Mr. Neal's concerns?
Absolutely. So in looking at the form, first in honesty, there were some omissions on my part as I look at it. Things like favorable feedback from other areas. I have talked to those in the area who are using the program. It's a fairly popular book. It's on its 3rd edition at this point. So there were some that were missed. Others were actually just for full transparency. Things that we didn't deem, relevant as far as, some of the visual aids, we didn't necessarily deem relevant and important, and I didn't want to just go checking off boxes to say that they were checked off, that I felt leaving them blank was, to be, honest and transparent in their relevancy. As far as the reading level, that was one that is a, omission on my end. I absolutely, thoroughly looked at the textbooks that were being offered and considered. And in our conversation, all 3 of us, who looked at the book, said that reading level wise, it made the most sense for our students, knowing that it was going to be offered as a 9th through 12th grade elective. In our Algebra 2 course, they're currently using the NG, the Next Gen Personal Finance, which I know you're, familiar
Oh, yes. Oh, I love it.
with. And, one of the issues that we've seen in that is the links in that send you to, various articles across the internet are not necessarily meant for 9th grade students. They're articles that are
Yeah.
written out of Forbes, they're written out of, pretty high-level magazines.
Many ads.
Absolutely, many ads too. But even the content of the articles that they link to were not necessarily meant for an introduction to 9th and 10th grade students.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to kind of look at this closer and go over the textbook if you're familiar with the content. I'm happy to kind of show you the book and kind of go through that closely if you prefer.
Yeah, and did you look at the digital resources for this? Because I did look into it myself.
We did.
And it didn't seem that they had a significant amount of digital resources.
No, there absolutely is a full digital component to it. Now, we had to request access from the publisher to
Yeah.
get access to the full digital component.
Yeah, I read the overview. Could you actually briefly go over what's available digitally?
Sure. Obviously, all the text is available online, but so is students' ability to notate information, to highlight pieces. All the activities are there online. The closed captioning and the audio support is there online. It's a full, fully supported online program. We are having conversations at this point. Is the purchase of the textbook? Do we want to purchase the full digital component and for how long? So there, there's still some conversations on that end because there's a difference in cost between purchasing the online,
Yeah.
for 6 years as well as just the print textbook. But that's a decision, that we can make as well.
Mr. Schwartz, could you just update the AR with the reading level and and add in the digital resources, just so that we have it on the record for
Absolutely.
when we vote on it next month? And that way we'll know, where we were at this time stamp.
I'll have that for you by the end of the week. Absolutely.
Can I just add as well, the accessibility component? We have teachers in our district that do a lot of those things already for a lot of our materials that may not be able to have it built in automatically. We do transfer things into Braille within in-house. We do things like that. So there is that ability that we can, if it's not done through the publisher, we can do it with our own people in our district to make it accessible for all students.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments about personal finance? Okay, number 5, the policies. Mr. Desnoyer?
Policy 233, suspension and expulsion. And this is simply getting updated as a result of a change in state law. Basically, the age at which a student must attend school has been increased from up to their 17th birthday to up to their 18th birthday. So our policy 233 is simply getting updated to indicate that if a student, if we expel a student, we will provide alternate education for that extra year. And that's the sole update being made to this policy.
Do you have anything additional? I do not at this time. Any questions or concerns from board members? This is a law change, so. Okay. Mr. Schwartz, I don't know if I said thank you for your presentation, so I just want to make sure that I do. You did a great job, thank you. So at this time, we are at the time of the meeting for public comments on our agenda items. If you have a comment or question, please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record, and we'll see who we can get to answer it for you. Any comments or questions from the public about the Education Pupil Services agenda? Okay, seeing none, if you would like to review.
So item number 1, Dr. Manfrey and Mr. Salerno was an informational item. They were the Census Project and International Mother Language Day poster winners. Number 2 was the PebbleGo and PebbleGo Next. That will require board action, and that was Mrs. Kathy Kania with the digital resources for the library.
Are the board members comfortable with moving forward PebbleGo and PebbleGo Next? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, so it looks like we have consensus for that.
The third item was Read 180 and System 44, and that was Mrs. Susan Ortley with the middle school recommendation.
Is everyone comfortable moving that forward for a vote?
Absolutely.
Yes, okay. Personal Finance Elective,
And that was Mr. Schwartz, the Personal Finance Elective for the high school.
are we comfortable moving that forward?
Yes, with those updates.
Yeah, with the updates, great. And the last one is the board policy? Yes, everyone's comfortable moving that forward?
Yes.
Okay, so I need a motion for adjournment. Thank you, all in favor?